The rain had been falling for hours, steady and unrelenting, tapping against the windows of a small rented house at the edge of town. Inside, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, his shoulders heavy from another late shift at the factory. His son, Ben, finally asleep in the next room after a nightmare, clutched his worn-out stuffed bear under the blanket. Ethan should have gone to bed himself, but sleep never came easy, not anymore. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight when the sound came, his phone buzzing on the counter. Unknown number. He frowned. Nobody called at this hour unless it was bad news. For a second he thought of letting it ring, but something deep in his gut told him to pick up. He answered with a tired, low hello. What he heard on the other end wasn't a prank, wasn't silence, and wasn't someone trying to sell him anything. It was a woman's voice, shaking, uneven, like it was cracking under its own weight. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't hang up. I can't breathe. Can you come? I need someone." Then an address, and the line went dead. Ethan sat frozen, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly louder than anything else. It could have been a mistake, a wrong number, someone drunk, or worse, a setup. But that voice, it hadn't sounded fake. It had sounded like someone clinging to their last bit of hope. He stood, checked on Ben one more time, brushed his son's hair back from his forehead, and whispered an apology. Then he grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door. By the time he stepped outside, the storm had deepened. The streets glistened under the glow of scattered streetlights, and the wind cut sharp against his face. His old truck coughed awake, headlights slicing through sheets of rain as he steered toward the address he'd memorized in those few desperate seconds on the phone. It wasn't in his part of town. The GPS led him past shuttered shops and quiet intersections, then toward a row of aging apartment buildings near the river. By the time he pulled up, the rain had soaked everything. The sidewalk, the rusted mailboxes, the faded blue doors. He found the number painted crookedly on the frame and climbed the narrow stairs, his boots squeaking with water. He knocked once, twice. For a moment, nothing. Then the door creaked open. A woman stood there barefoot, her sweater slipping from one shoulder, her face pale and streaked with tears. She couldn't have been much older than him, maybe early 30s, but grief made her look worn. Behind her, the apartment was dim, boxes stacked in corners, toys scattered but untouched. "You're not her," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No," Ethan said softly, "but I got a call, this address. You sounded like you needed help." For a moment she just stared, like she couldn't decide if he was real. Then her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, steadying her as she trembled in his arms. And in that instant, standing in a stranger's doorway at nearly 2 a.m, Ethan realised something he hadn't felt in a long time. He was exactly where he needed to be. The apartment smelled faintly of burnt coffee and dust, like a place where life had been paused for too long. Ethan guided the woman to a worn couch, setting her down gently. She wiped at her face with the sleeve of her sweater, embarrassed now that the panic had ebbed enough for her to notice him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her eyes darting away. "I thought I was calling my sister. I must have hit the wrong number." Ethan crouched so they were eye level. "Don't apologise, you sounded like you needed someone. That's enough reason to answer." Her hands shook as she tried to tuck her hair behind her ears. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that wasn't about sleep but about carrying too much for too long. "My name's Rachel," she finally said, almost reluctantly. "Ethan," he replied, offering a small nod. "And I'm not here to judge, Rachel, just wanted to make sure you're okay." Her eyes filled again, but she blinked hard, swallowing the tears before they could fall. "I lost my husband last year," she said quietly. "Accident at the plant. Since then it's just me and my little girl. Some nights it feels like the walls close in, and tonight was one of those nights." Ethan let the silence stretch. He knew better than to fill it with quick comfort. Instead, he scanned the room, boxes stacked against the wall, unopened mail on the counter, a child's drawing taped to the fridge. A stick figure family, 3 people holding hands under a sun that was too big for the page. He didn't need to ask which one was missing. From down the hall came the sound of a small cough, then the shuffle of tiny feet. A little girl appeared in the doorway, maybe 4 years old, with tangled hair and sleepy eyes. She rubbed her face and mumbled, "Mama." Rachel quickly wiped her cheeks and opened her arms. "It's okay, Lily, go back to bed." But the girl's eyes caught on Ethan. She studied him, not scared, just curious, the way children sometimes are with strangers who don't feel like strangers. Ethan offered a gentle smile and a small wave. "Hi there," he said softly. Lily tilted her head, then retreated down the hall, dragging a stuffed bunny by one ear. Rachel exhaled shakily. "She shouldn't have to see me like this," she murmured. Ethan shook his head. "Kids don't need perfect, Rachel. They need real. And you're still here. That matters." For a long moment, the only sound was the rain beating against the windows. Rachel stared at the floor, then whispered, "Why did you come? You don't even know me." Ethan leaned back, thoughtful. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone at 2 a.m, wondering if anyone cares enough to show up. And if I can keep someone else from feeling that way, even for one night, then I'll drive through the rain every time." Her lips trembled, but this time she didn't fight the tears. They fell quietly, not like a breakdown, but like a release she had been denying herself for too long. Ethan didn't move closer, didn't try to fix her. He just sat there, steady, present, letting her cry without shame. And for the first time in months, Rachel realised that maybe she wasn't as invisible as she thought. The rain had passed by morning, leaving the streets slick and shining, puddles reflecting the pale light of a new day. Ethan drove home in silence, the wipers squeaking across the windshield, his mind replaying the night. He hadn't meant to get involved, he never planned to. But as he pulled into the driveway and saw Ben's small shoes waiting by the door, he realised that sometimes life doesn't wait for plans, it just happens. Ben was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, sorting his toy cars into neat lines of colour. He looked up as his dad stepped in, his eyes curious. "Where were you, Dad?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then crouched down beside him. "A neighbour needed help," he said simply. "She was having a rough night." Ben studied his father's face the way only a child could, like he was trying to read the spaces between words. "Did you help her?" "I hope so," Ethan replied, ruffling his son's hair. "Sometimes just showing up is the help." A few days later, their paths crossed again. Ethan had stopped by Rachel's apartment to check in, not sure if she'd even open the door. She did, looking a little less fragile, though her eyes still carried the weight of sleepless nights. Lily clung to her mother's leg, hiding behind the folds of Rachel's sweater. "This is my son Ben," Ethan said, nudging the boy forward. Ben, shy at first, gave a small wave. Lily peeked from behind her mum and whispered something too soft to hear. Rachel coaxed her gently, and soon Lily stepped out, clutching her stuffed bunny, offering it forward as if it were a gift. Ben blinked, surprised, then held out one of his cars, a red one, slightly chipped from years of play. They swapped silently, the kind of transaction kids make when words aren't necessary. Within minutes, they were on the floor together, pushing cars and the bunny across an imaginary road made from the edge of a rug. Their laughter broke the heaviness of the apartment, echoing off walls that had been too quiet for too long. Rachel stood by the counter watching, her arms folded tight across her chest, but her face softened in a way she hadn't expected. "She hasn't laughed like that in months," she whispered. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching the two children create a world of their own. "Ben's the same way. He doesn't open up easy. But when he finds someone who gets him, it's like he finally remembers how to be a kid." For a few precious minutes, the room didn't feel like a place of grief anymore. It felt lived in, alive. Rachel glanced at Ethan, her voice quiet. "Thank you for coming back." He shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just let me know if you need me again." And though neither of them said it aloud, they both felt it, that maybe this wasn't just about surviving another night. Maybe it was the beginning of something neither of them thought they'd find again. The following week, Ethan stopped by again after his shift, bringing a bag of muffins from the diner near the factory. Ben carried them proudly up the stairs, already eager to see if Lily would want to trade another toy today. Rachel opened the door with a tired smile. "You didn't have to do that," she said, eyeing the muffins. "Trust me," Ethan replied, handing the bag to her. "They were going to end up in my truck and be gone before sunrise." Better to share. Lily darted out from behind her mother, giggling as Ben held up 2 toy cars like an offering. Within seconds, the kids were on the floor again, their laughter filling the apartment. It should have been a light evening, but then came the knock. It was sharp, impatient, the kind that doesn't wait for welcome. Rachel's smile vanished. She froze, then reluctantly opened the door wider. A man in a heavy jacket stood in the hall, clipboard in hand. "Rachel," he said flatly, "you're 3 weeks behind on rent. I can't keep waiting." Her face flushed, her fingers tightening on the doorframe. "I told you I just need a little more time." The man shook his head. "End of the month, no more extensions. If I don't have payment by then, I'll have to start the process. You know how it works." His tone wasn't cruel, just businesslike. Another reminder that the world doesn't pause for grief. Rachel nodded stiffly, murmuring, "I understand." She closed the door quickly, leaning her forehead against it for a moment before turning back. Ethan had seen everything. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he sat down at the edge of the couch, giving her space. The kids kept playing, oblivious, their laughter a strange contrast to the silence between the adults. Finally, Rachel sank into a chair, her voice low. "I had savings once. My husband's job covered the rent. But after he passed, between bills, the funeral, everything, I can barely keep up. I don't want Lily to see how bad it is." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Rachel, you don't have to explain yourself to me." "But I do," she said, her voice trembling, "because it feels humiliating. I used to think I had it together. Now I'm... this." She gestured weakly at the apartment, the unopened mail, the weight of it all. Ethan shook his head gently. "You're not this. You're a mum who's still standing. That counts for more than you realise." Her eyes brimmed, but she blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. For a moment she looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to believe him. From the floor, Lily's laughter rang out as Ben made a silly crash sound with the toy cars. Rachel turned toward the sound and her expression softened. "I don't want her to grow up remembering me like this," she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze. "She won't. She'll remember that you stayed, that you fought for her, that you showed up every single day, even when it hurt." Rachel let out a shaky breath, and for the first time since the landlord's knock, her shoulders eased. It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it was enough to remind her that she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. The fair rolled into town on a Friday evening, filling the quiet streets with strings of lights and the smell of fried dough. For most families it was a tradition, a chance to let kids run wild with cotton candy and carnival rides. For Rachel, it was something she hadn't dared to try since her husband passed. But when Lily tugged at her sleeve with wide eyes and Ben chimed in with, "Please, Dad, it'll be fun," she found herself saying yes. They walked through the gates together, the noise wrapping around them in waves. Music blared from the carousel, teenagers laughed too loudly near the game booths, and the air buzzed with life. Lily clutched her bunny in one hand and Rachel's fingers in the other, while Ben carried 2 crumpled dollars he was determined to spend on a ring toss. For the first time in a long time, Rachel let herself smile at the sight of Lily's face lit up by the flashing lights. It felt like a piece of normal life she thought she'd lost. Ethan bought the kids a shared bag of kettle corn, and they wandered past rows of games and rides. At one booth, Ben proudly handed over his dollars. The rings clattered against the bottles, none landing where he hoped, but the booth worker gave him a small plastic whistle anyway. Ben grinned like it was gold. Everything seemed easy, until it wasn't. In the middle of the crowd, Rachel loosened her grip on Lily's hand just long enough to dig for napkins in her purse. When she looked up, the bunny was on the ground, but Lily was gone. "Lily?" Her voice cut sharper than she intended. She spun around, her heart pounding, scanning the sea of strangers. "Ben, stay close," Ethan ordered quickly, grabbing his son's shoulder before pushing through the crowd. Rachel's chest tightened, panic rising so fast it stole her breath. The noise of the fair grew unbearable, laughter, shouts, music, all crashing together like static. "Lily!" she called again, her voice breaking. Ethan's eyes moved faster than hers, trained by years of watching out for his own child. He darted toward the corner of a game booth, and there, half hidden behind a row of stuffed animals, was a small figure with tangled hair and tear-streaked cheeks, clutching the bunny tight. "Hey, sweetheart." Ethan said gently as he crouched down. "We've been looking everywhere for you." Lily sniffled, her lower lip trembling. "Too many people," she whispered. Rachel rushed in, scooping her daughter into her arms. Relief hit her so hard she almost collapsed right there. She pressed her face into Lily's hair, whispering, "I'm here. I've got you. I'm not letting go." Ethan placed a steady hand on Rachel's shoulder. "She's okay. She's safe." But Rachel wasn't okay. For a moment, the fear had cracked her wide open, dragging her back to the day she got the call about her husband. The same helplessness, the same bottomless dread. And yet, this time, someone had been there to help her stand. Later, as the kids sat quietly sharing a lemonade, Rachel glanced at Ethan, her voice soft but fierce. "I don't know how to do this, how to be strong all the time." "You don't have to be," he said simply. "Sometimes strong just means staying. You showed up for her tonight, that's what matters." Rachel swallowed hard, her fingers brushing Lily's hair as if to reassure herself she was still there. And in that moment, she realised something she hadn't allowed herself to believe in a long time. She wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore. The fair had left them all worn out, the kind of tired that lingers not just in the body, but in the heart. For Rachel, the memory of losing sight of Lily still echoed, sharp and raw, even as she clutched her daughter close that night. But alongside the fear, something else had taken root. The memory of Ethan's steady hand, his calm voice, the way he never let her face it alone. A few evenings later, Rachel found herself standing in her small kitchen, staring at a box of pasta and a head of lettuce. It wasn't much, but it was what she had. She hesitated before reaching for her phone. "Would you and Ben like to come for dinner?" she typed, then deleted it. Too forward, too awkward. She tried again. "We're making dinner tonight. You should come." After staring at the screen for a full minute, she hit send. When Ethan and Ben arrived, Rachel nearly apologised for the simplicity of the meal. But Ben's eyes lit up at the sight of macaroni bubbling on the stove, and Lily proudly announced that she had washed the lettuce all by myself. They sat around the small table, the kids elbow to elbow, whispering secrets over cups of juice. Rachel set down the pasta in a chipped bowl, cheeks flushed. "I know it's nothing fancy," Ethan interrupted with a grin. "Rachel, this is a feast compared to what I usually put together. Ben's lucky if I remember to slice an apple with his sandwich." Ben laughed, nearly spilling his juice, and Lily covered her mouth to hide her giggles. The sound filled the apartment in a way Rachel hadn't realised she needed. For months, meals had been quiet affairs, heavy with absence. Now the silence was broken, not by noise, but by life. Halfway through dinner, Lily climbed down from her chair, ran to her room and came back clutching a stack of crayon drawings. She spread them across the table, her little finger pointing out each one. "This one's me and Mommy, this one's me and Daddy in heaven, and this one," she looked at Ethan shyly, "is you, fixing our window." Ethan blinked. "I've never fixed your window." "You held the door open so it didn't slam," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "That's the same thing." Rachel looked at the drawing and then at Ethan, her throat tight. It wasn't about the door, and they both knew it. Lily had drawn him as someone who showed up. After the kids had run off to play, Rachel stood by the sink rinsing dishes while Ethan dried them with a worn towel. "You didn't have to come tonight," she said quietly. He shrugged. "Didn't seem right to say no." Rachel glanced toward the sound of the children's laughter drifting from the other room. "They're happy," she murmured. "I forgot what that felt like." Ethan set the plate down and leaned against the counter. "Happiness sneaks in when you least expect it. Sometimes all it takes is a meal and 2 kids with crayons." Rachel met his eyes for a brief moment, then quickly looked away, her cheeks warm. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to, the look was enough. And in that small kitchen, over an ordinary dinner, something extraordinary had quietly begun. The days that followed felt different. What had started as chance visits turned into a quiet rhythm. Ethan would stop by after his shift, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing more than a tired smile. Ben and Lily built entire worlds out of crayons and toy cars, and for a few hours at a time, Rachel's apartment no longer felt like a place heavy with loss. One evening, after the kids had finally fallen asleep in a heap of blankets and stuffed animals, Rachel and Ethan sat on the small balcony just outside her living room. The air was cool, carrying the smell of someone's barbecue drifting from another building nearby. The city lights flickered faintly beyond the trees. Rachel wrapped her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "I used to hate this place," she admitted quietly. "The peeling paint, the noisy neighbours, the way the heater works only when it feels like it. But lately, it doesn't feel so empty anymore." Ethan leaned back in his chair, glancing at her. "Places aren't empty, Rachel. They just wait for the right people to fill them." She let the words settle between them, staring down at her hands. The truth was, she had grown used to silence, too used to it. But silence wasn't the same as peace, and Ethan's presence had reminded her of that. Almost without thinking, she spoke. "There's a room down the hall. It used to be my husband's little office. Nobody's been in there for months. It just sits there collecting dust." She hesitated, then looked at him. "If you and Ben ever needed somewhere to stay, even just for a while, it's there." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. He shifted forward, his hands clasped together. "Rachel!" "I know," she said quickly, her voice rushing to fill the space. "It's not much, and I'm not offering charity. She exhaled, struggling to find the words. "When you're here, this place feels alive. For Lily, for me, and maybe for you too." Ethan was silent for a long moment, listening to the distant hum of the city, to the muffled sound of Ben and Lily breathing in their sleep inside. Part of him wanted to say yes right then, to accept the chance at something more. But another part, the part shaped by years of doing everything alone, of surviving without handouts, hesitated. He rubbed a hand over his face. "I don't want Ben growing up thinking we take what isn't ours. I've worked hard to keep us standing, even when it meant scraping by." Rachel nodded slowly. "I understand, truly. But maybe this isn't about taking. Maybe it's about sharing." Her eyes met his then, steady and unflinching in the dim light. And for the first time, Ethan wondered if this wasn't just about survival anymore. Maybe it was the start of something they hadn't dared imagine. Two lives slowly learning how to fit together. Inside, the children stirred in their sleep, unaware that a single, hesitant offer had already begun to change everything. The next morning came too early. Ethan was pouring coffee into a chipped mug when his phone buzzed on the counter. The number was familiar, his supervisor at the factory. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something told him to answer. "Ethan, good news," the voice said. "We've got an opening at the main plant out of state. Better pay, steady hours, benefits for you and your boy. I thought of you first. Think about it, but don't take too long. We'll need an answer by the end of the week." Ethan hung up, staring at the phone like it had turned into something heavier than metal and glass. More money, security, health coverage. The kind of offer most single parents pray for. But it meant leaving. Uprooting Ben. Walking away from the life that had just started to feel less lonely. That evening he sat on the couch as Ben lined up his cars along the coffee table. "Dad?" Ben asked without looking up. "What's it like when people move away?" Ethan hesitated. "Sometimes it's hard. You leave behind things you know, but sometimes you go because it's the best choice." Ben placed one of the cars carefully at the end of the line, his small voice barely above a whisper. "I like it here. Lily makes me laugh. Miss Rachel makes spaghetti better than you. I don't want to move." Ethan smiled faintly, though his chest ached. "Her spaghetti's hard to beat, I'll give you that." Later that night, he walked over to Rachel's apartment. She was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through a stack of unpaid bills. The sight made his decision feel heavier. He pulled out a chair, sat across from her, and finally spoke. "They offered me a job, out of state, better pay, benefits. Everything I've been trying to give Ben." Rachel froze, the envelope in her hand forgotten. Her lips parted, but for a moment no words came. Then she set the paper down carefully. That's good news, Ethan." "Is it?" he asked quietly. "Because it feels like anything but." Her eyes softened. "You don't owe us anything. You have to do what's best for your son." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his temples. "That's the problem. I don't know what best is anymore. Ben feels at home here. He smiles in a way I haven't seen in years. And He stopped himself, the words hanging heavy in the air. Rachel looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Maybe best isn't just about money or health coverage. Maybe it's about where he feels safe, where you do too." The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. Outside, the streetlights flickered to life. Ethan thought about all the years he'd fought to keep his son afloat on his own, and now, for the first time, there was someone else holding part of that weight. He didn't answer her that night, but as he walked back to his place, Ben already asleep on the couch, Ethan realised the decision wasn't just about jobs or benefits, it was about belonging, about whether he was willing to leave behind the one thing he'd stopped believing in, a chance at family. The letter came on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel found it taped to her door when she came home from her shift at the diner. The paper was folded once, but the message was clear in black ink. Final notice. 10 days to vacate if payment is not received. Her stomach dropped. She had known it was coming, but seeing it in writing made her knees weak. She pulled it down quickly, not wanting Lily to notice. But when she stepped inside, Ethan was already there, helping Ben and Lily build a lopsided tower out of plastic blocks. He caught the look on her face before she could hide it. "What is it?" Rachel hesitated, then handed him the paper. Ethan read it once, jaw tightening, then again slower, as if hoping the words would change. They didn't. "Rachel," he said gently, "you should have told me it was this bad." "I didn't want to," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You've got enough on your plate. I thought maybe I could figure it out before anyone had to know." Ethan folded the letter carefully, setting it on the table like it might explode if he handled it wrong. "You're not alone in this anymore. Not with me, not with Ben. We'll figure it out." Her eyes flicked up, desperate. "But how? You might be moving for that job. I can't pay this on my own, and if we lose this place, I don't know where Lily and I go." Ethan sat down across from her, steady and calm, though his heart was racing. "Maybe I don't take the job," he said finally. Rachel shook her head quickly. "No, you can't throw away security for us." "It's not throwing it away," he replied. "It's choosing what matters most. I've spent years chasing stability, but Ben doesn't talk about money when he says he's happy here. He talks about Lily, about spaghetti dinners, about how this place feels like home." Rachel pressed her hand over her mouth, tears slipping past her fingers. "I don't want to be the reason you give up a better life." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low but certain. "Rachel, maybe this is the better life. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Shared." For a long moment she couldn't answer. The kids' laughter carried from the floor as the tower of blocks toppled over, their giggles spilling through the room. It was such a simple sound, but it filled the silence with something more powerful than fear. Finally, Rachel lowered her hand. "Then we do it together, whatever it takes." Ethan nodded, a slow smile breaking through the weight of the moment. Together. It wasn't a solution yet. The bills hadn't vanished and the notice was still real. But for the first time, neither of them felt cornered. They weren't two people drowning separately. They were standing side by side, ready to fight for something worth keeping. The weekend came with sunlight, the kind that made even the cracked sidewalks glow a little warmer. Ethan showed up at Rachel's apartment carrying a small sapling in a black plastic pot. Ben trailed behind him with a plastic shovel, and Lily bounced at the door, already asking a dozen questions. Rachel tilted her head, puzzled. "What's this?" "A tree," Ethan said simply. "Thought we could plant it out front. Something that belongs to all of us. Something that stays." For a moment she just stared at him, the weight of the eviction notice still tucked away in a drawer, the uncertainty of tomorrow heavy on her shoulders. But then she looked at the kids. Ben clutching the shovel like it was a sword, Lily hugging her bunny with excitement, and she felt something shift inside her. They carried the pot down the steps together, finding a patch of dirt by the front walkway where weeds had grown wild. Ethan knelt first, breaking the soil loose, while Ben dug with all the seriousness of a boy on a mission. Lily crouched beside them, patting the dirt with her tiny hands. Rachel stood back for a moment, watching. The sight of them there, two kids laughing, Ethan steady in the middle of it all, brought tears she didn't fight this time. They weren't tears of fear or grief, but something gentler, something that felt like healing. When the tree was finally in the ground, Ethan brushed the dirt from his palms and glanced at Rachel. "It's not much," he said, almost shy, "but it'll grow, as long as someone cares for it." Rachel stepped closer, her voice soft. "It's more than enough." She pressed her hand lightly against the soil, then looked up at him. I don't need promises about forever. I just need to know you won't disappear. Ethan met her eyes. Rachel, I'm not going anywhere, not from you, not from them. He nodded toward the children, now decorating the sapling with a ribbon they'd found in Lily's toy box. For the first time in a long time, Rachel believed him. That night, after the kids had drifted to sleep on the couch in a tangle of blankets, Ethan and Rachel sat on the balcony again. The tree outside stood small and fragile under the streetlight, but it was there, rooted, alive, a quiet declaration that hope could take hold even in broken ground. Rachel sipped from her mug, her voice barely above a whisper. You showed up when you didn't have to, and you stayed. Ethan leaned back, the night air cool against his face. Sometimes that's all it takes, showing up, staying. They didn't need more words. The laughter of children still echoed faintly in the walls. The new tree swayed gently in the breeze. And in the silence that followed, both of them knew. They hadn't found a perfect life, but they had found each other, and that was enough to build on. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give isn't money or answers. It's simply showing up, staying when it matters, and reminding others they don't have to carry life alone. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. I'm truly grateful for your time. If it touched you, please give it a like and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. I'll see you again soon, right here on Rain Inside.